everyone. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker Training. I'm Richard Carlton, creator of FMTrain.tv, where every day, Monday through Friday, we are doing great FileMaker training. I should say Claris FileMaker training. So today is a very exciting day. Margaret's going to pop up the upcoming broadcast schedule. All right, so today's broadcast, we're going to be continuing the conversation on functions. Tomorrow, it has my picture, but it's going to be the let function with Calvin Mosiman. He's doing a great job. On Thursday, Hansa will be doing whatever Hansa does. In fact, you'll see this millisecond shenanigans going on. We're going to cover that a little bit. But today's conversation is going to be about get functions. Real quick, if you want to support the channel, buy one of the bundles here. That will help us out greatly. For those of you who already have the bundle, I want to thank you. Thank you. And feel free to buy 5 or 6 more copies of the bundle. No, I'm just messing with you. But yes, a lot of people out there like that. So we expect this to 2024 to be an exciting year for the Claris FileMaker platform. I'm going to go into FileMaker. We're going to talk about the get functions real quick. So we had this conversation yesterday where we were playing with these get functions and trying to do things. And every time we get into get function, it almost immediately corkscrews into a conversation about the relevancy of that get function. And suddenly it becomes really interesting because people haven't seen something or aren't aware of something. And so I really am counting on all of you on Discord, Twitch, and YouTube to yell at me to tell me you would like me to amplify on something because I assume you know something and maybe you don't. And so I need you to wave your hand aggressively and say more information, more detail, etc. And so we'll get through 10 or 20 of the functions today. But I want to make sure that all of you are educated the best we can. So I go to FileMaker Help right here. FileMaker Help's pretty decent. I'm going to do a search over here for get function. And so we did a bunch of them yesterday, and there's a listing here that's mostly alphabetical. And where were we at, Mark?
So we literally finished get current extended privileges because we had a whole debate about what was current extended privileges versus.
Yeah, the current extended this should be a value list. This should be a value list of all the value, just a list. It's a return delimited list of all the extended privileges that are enabled. Once again, if you're connected to a file that's running on a FileMaker server, you have at least FM app or WebDirect or something that is running there. So get current host timestamp. The word host is Claris's way of saving server. Okay, so get server timestamp, current server timestamp, which is weird. It really should be get current timestamp from host, right? But the way they say it there is get the current host, implying that there might be a different host or more than one host. It's just, once again, kind of funky writing there. Current privilege set name. So yesterday we talked about the breakdown of the security items. We had account, which is username and password. We had the privilege set name. And then we had the extended privileges, which is a list. It could be more than one item on there, right? So Richard Carlton /1234 would be the account and password. Okay. Admin or full access or maybe blue sales one, whatever it was yesterday for Ken. Margaret, can you see that file real quick from yesterday? Is on your desktop?
Everyone's going to watch me do it. So we're going to watch a Margaret adventure.
I'm doing it. They see, they're seeing it on your screen. Yeah, send that to me real quick.
I'm going to quit FileMaker to make sure I don't send you a file that's currently open.
Well, that could be worse. All right, so then we got that. We got the current time. Does everyone understand this is the clock on your device?
Briefly
on your computer?
Pause. They literally are only seeing me scroll through our conversation. So
I'm just gonna keep talking about this real quick.
Yeah.
Current timestamp. So the timestamp is the date and the time in a string, right? Kind of interesting. Then these two items here, these are kind of like for developers who, like a Hansa is always doing performance tuning or performance testing. Microseconds and milliseconds have to do largely with testing the performance of your FileMaker application between point A and point B. Custom menu set. Menu sets are these items at the top. Menu sets are not great in terms of the way they're implemented on FileMaker. They've always been a nightmare. Nick tries really hard to make them digestible for people, but it's one of those things that I think that the people who built it 25 years ago or 30 years ago had good intentions. It hasn't been touched in at least 25 or 30 years, right? Because no one uses it. And it's just, I whenever I get into it, I intuitively try to use it. Like if Steve Jobs had ever tried to use the custom menu set name, he would have started firing people at Claris. I mean that seriously, because he used FileMaker and he was not afraid to terminate employees who did dumb things. And so, yeah, whoever created the menu set architecture, um, just it's this not intuitively understandable. It requires an instruction manual. And anytime you build software that requires instruction manual, you have failed, right? Generally, right? This is the file from yesterday. By the way, that graphic up there was the Apple building from the Claris Engage / DevCon, right? Pretty exciting. So that was that. This is the Git file. There we go. So we have this as a sample if we need it. All right, so path names. Let's talk about path names real quick. So path names are, for those of you who are new to, well, computers, it's like, the path on a drive, on your hard drive to get to a specific spot. So C drive / program files / well, whatever, right? If I come over here to my computer right here and I say window or Christian tools, I say data viewer. Data viewer is basically has a lot of interesting things in it. One of the things is that you can run a calculation simulation in here, which is kind of neat. It's a little calculation. You can run something here. Like if I say 1 + 2, I get the results down here. If I say get current, if I say timestamp, right, like that one, then we get this down here. If I say get current host timestamp, okay, that boogered that up. Let's try that again. Get current host timestamp. Okay, now am I running on a server right now? It's a local file. So what will it do?
Just grab the local files.
I guess it considers me a host, even though I'm not hosting the file. That's kind of funky. So it defaults to getting your local timestamp if the file's running locally, but it's not a host. I don't know. I'd have to argue with that, whether that's a good backup kind of deal, right? That makes sense, right? Because there's no host, so it's misleading. It's your timestamp. So anyway, let's see. So go back over here. Oh, desktop. Oh, so let's talk about paths, right? So if I say get, or if I just say path.
No, it's going to bring up custom functions. You have to have the get typed in front first.
And then I have to say, can I put path here? There we go. Here are all the paths.
That's a lot of them.
So let's talk about the ones that are useful, and let's talk about the difference between the clients. So cache file path is Clay Mackel or David McGee or someone built this for the engineers and the Death Star here, who built it for some of the TIE fighter people, the developers that are out there. I'm using my Star Wars acronyms today, or analogies today. But it's kind of a weird one in the weeds. I think it's for developers who build tools like Base Elements and Auto and things like that. Desktop path, super useful, because where this becomes useful is that we need paths when we're exporting containers, we're exporting data export, make an export of tab delimited data, but exporting a container which contains, or saving it as a PDF is super common. Save as a PDF. You want to automate with a script, you got to save it somewhere. So you set the path into a variable. Cannot be in a field. Has to be in a global variable, I believe. Has to be in a variable for sure. And might be a local variable, but variable. And then desktop path will drop it on the desktop. Documents path is the documents path for the current user. So if I was to open my hard drive here, really, this computer is used by Richard Carlton, but if it was used by 12 different people, you would open this up and you'd see Richard Carlton and Sally Brown and Dick Smith and whoever, right? And so this is my folder in here, right? And so if I close all this stupid stuff, these are all the random things that are in my user directory. The documents is in here, right? So then here's some import log from whatever that is, and then from Zoom, when we do meetings, saves things into here. So that would be the path to get to that. So so it's like Macintosh hard drive / Richard Carlton / documents or something, right? So let's try that. Get path. And then I do desktop path. Oh, wait a minute. I want documents path. Let me do that one. There it is. Macintosh hard drive, users, Richard Carlton, one word, documents with an S. That is super useful. So keep in mind that when you're on Windows, it'll look a little different. It'll be C/ or whatever drive you're on. That's kind of important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this again. Let's go through these real quick. So you got desktop path to your desktop, documents path, document path listing. This will give you a list, a value list of every item in that path. So if I do this, right, I'm going to do this one. What was in that documents directory? It was the import log and that Zoom thing,
Zoom stuff,
right? So
yeah.
okay,
Oh,
well, oh, it did it, but it went in here and it drilled down. Check it out. So it went inside the documents directory, right? So it
huh.
found the Zoom folder. Then it lists everything in the Zoom folder, right? You follow, Margaret?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is one of those little subtle things. I haven't used this in a while, but then we have a meeting with this. We had training meetings. We
And then
had
I
live
guess what,
streams.
that you'd parse something out of it that you wanted?
Well, you're doing it's in a text block, so you can do a pattern count for it, or a search string, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or you could go through each one and grab it and import it, right? If you had a listing in here,
Oh,
you could actually go in and say import into a container whatever was here, assuming it was importable, right? So,
that's cool.
right, like you can't really import into a container a folder. It doesn't like that. You have to zip the folder first,
Mm-hmm.
but that you get that kind of idea where it gives you this kind of flexibility. Pretty neat. So I got to get path again. So documents path, FileMaker path. This is the path to the installation of FileMaker Go or Pro. I don't know what that does on WebDirect. You'd have to check this. This gets back into these ideas. If you go over here to the help, what's interesting about the paths here, like if you get FileMaker Path, you click on it. The really interesting, okay, so first up here is understanding what it does. And then the interesting nuggets of it are down here, right? Where it'll say, well, this only works if it's Tuesday and your left toe is pointed in the air, right? It's all the little exceptions, right? This function is only supported in FileMaker Pro and FileMaker Go, right? Because and we're going to get to WebDirect here, but WebDirect is not I don't want to say a real client. It's a real client, but it doesn't live on your local device. It lives on the FileMaker server generally. I'm going to say that as a general statement. It lives on the FileMaker server. Okay. As a result, the path for that machine is the server path, right? So come down here, you look at that, it returns this stuff here. See that for Windows, returns that for Mac. But once again, this is dependent upon the name of the hard drive for the Mac. I mean, one of my engineers always names his hard drive after starships. So it'd be the enterprise / applications, whatever. Right. So you get that idea. Let me back over here. FileMaker path. Get path. Get a path. I can't type. Do we have any questions along the way? It's kind of basic so far.
Comments, as long as peer-to-peer sharing exists, even if it's not turned on, then you can argue that a copy of FileMaker Pro opens the file, is the host.
Yeah, I was going to play with that, but I didn't want to get too far in the weeds. I would say if you were hosting the file on Pro, which I'm not, and hosting's not even enabled on that file, I don't believe, then it would make sense. It came up during the Claris conversation or at DevCon, the developer conference, which is called Engage. The marketing term is Engage, but it's a developer conference. Clay Mackel, who you can generally assume represents the thought process of at least the engineers at Claris, or a big chunk of them at Claris, basically said that, hey, we keep trying to kill this thing. It's still here. We don't know how long it's going to be here. And I said, how come you haven't removed it? And he goes, and I said this in front of 100 and whatever people. And he goes, well, every time we try to remove it, people start squealing. And so sooner or later, Claris is going to get tired of that. When they issue FileMaker Pro, that's free, the freemium version, there shouldn't be any sharing on that item. If you want to share, you need to cut a check and pay money to Claris, because you're deriving a business value from that, right? If you're using it by yourself, that's fine. But if you're trying to share it with people, you're deriving business value, you need to cut a check and pay Claris for that. You really do, right? That this company is funded by the money that we pay for it. Like you buy my bundles and training, that funds the live streams. If you buy the product from Claris, you're funding future development. You're helping your own best interest, and I mean that very seriously. Yes.
We have 2 comments about Path, and
Yep.
Ed, I will ask your question at the very end of the stream. Path only needs a local variable as long as it is accessed while that variable exists, i.e. during a script.
Mm-hmm.
Which, interesting.
Okay.
I don't,
Yeah,
I
that's
don't quite know
fine.
what that's referring to.
No, I understand. You set the path in a script, Margaret, and then you tell it to export or import from that path is how that works. That way it tells the command where to run. I'm not going to cover that right now. We've done that before. Get file path is the current FMP 12 file, is what that is. Get file path. Took me a second to figure out what that is. This tells you, notice it says file, it tells you the path on where the file's at, right? which suspiciously looks very similar to the current desktop path, except the desktop path doesn't say file on it. This one adds file to the front of it, which is interesting.
Interesting. We have a
Yeah.
quick question. Document
Yep.
path listing. Does it list files or only a directory?
Nah, it lists everything in here. These are all. So there's a directory. So if I go back over to my thing over here, this is what's in. If I go into documents, this is what's in there. Okay. So I thought either it would be everything or it'd be just 2 entries. Well, that entry right there is at the very bottom down here. If I scroll down there, it is import log down there at the bottom. And the top one, which was the Zoom folder, is up here. So it shows both of those. Then it drills down and shows everything inside, right? And so if you go in here, it's kind of this elaborate mess in here where it's got, a bunch of directories and each one there's a bunch of, so it's listing out every directory and every file in there. It doesn't mean you can do anything with it. It just means it's just giving you a complete listing is what that is. So it's up to you to decide what you want to do with it. It's a string. This is a block of string. It's just like a text file, like a block of text, but it's return delimited on the end, right? Cool. Moving the path. What else we got? We got file path, file path, preferences path. That's interesting. Temporary path. Okay, so preferences path, just for fun. Let's go over to the help. Is the help still helping me over here?
What is the preferences path? Like preferences is
I've never used it. So it's a preferences for FileMaker. My guess is that the plugins are dumped in there, right? That's where your plugins would go for the most part.
Huh.
Yeah, right, because it's a library and preferences, but it might be
Yeah.
inside the word FileMaker inside there. Like if we go, let's just go in there. Like, so here, I'm going to come over here. You go to oh, it's not showing it, right? Richard Carlton, library. See, it's not showing it. It's in, anyone know off the top of your head how to make that visible? View. There's a
You have
trick
to
to
summon
showing
it
it.
via terminal?
Yes, is what you have to do. So, and I haven't done that probably in a year and a half, 2 years, but this is how you get to that and you see all that, right? And then you could go in there and drill down. Anyway, FileMaker path, file name, file path, file size. By the way, this is the actual FMP12 file size. If you have containers in here, they'll be included. If your containers are remote, they will not be included in here. Okay. Found count, the number of records in your found count. If you do a search, right? You do a search in a script and you come back with 0, you had 0 in the found count. Whenever you're doing a search, I always do get last error, right? As my error trapping. And an error, when you have a find that gets no records, the error code is 401. I have about 4 or 5 error codes memorized. No related record is another error code. That's error code 101. Lock sync error. A lock sync error is where you're trying to get editing control of a record, but it's the thing where you click in there and it says, "Oh, sorry, Sally is currently editing this record, and she's gone on vacation, so you're out of luck or whack out of luck, right?" But you can, if you don't know the error code 401 for a found set that search that has failed in FileMaker, you can always say get the found count, and if it's 0, then you've basically solved the same problem the same way. Question, Margaret, about that?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay. So found count, it's not the record count. There's record count and found count. Record count is the number of records for the context sensitive, right? So this is for the current found set of if there are multiple windows open in the current database, each window can have its own found count, but the results are returned for the foreground window. So once again, this gets back to this idea you can have multiple windows open, even in Go or WebDirect. They're virtualized. In WebDirect, they're virtualized, but Go, you can see them. You can slide them laterally left and right. With WebDirect, they're utterly invisible, and you have to keep track of them. So with WebDirect, if you don't want to lose track of windows, yes.
So WebDirect just doesn't open like another browser window. It poofs off.
Why don't we do a WebDirect for absolute beginners live stream? That would be a really great topic because it's called the single document interface, and you have to keep track of with WebDirect. I always name the windows specifically, so I can forcibly tell the client, which is WebDirect, to go to that window. The extra work you do works in Go and Pro just fine. With FileMaker, Okay. With FileMaker over here, you can go to Windows and it will give you the list of all the windows that are actively open and
Yeah.
implicitly open up here. With
Yes.
Go, you kind of shrink it down and you can see the windows. And I'm moving my hand, so make my little box bigger, Margaret, if you could on the screen. But you can swipe left and right. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But you can only see one at a time.
Yes.
With WebDirect, you can only see one at a time, and they're all still there. But where on Go, you could swipe back and forth. On WebDirect, they're completely invisible, and there's no way to visibly see them. I don't know if there's a get list me all my windows function. That would be a good function. I don't even know if that's there. It would make sense. But as I create them in WebDirect, I name them. So then as I'm kind of unwinding a process, even if I'm not sure if it was open or closed, I'll say, go to window, new contact, close it. And what you say is you say, go to window, blah, blah. Then you do an error trap to see if it failed. If it fails, then you know it couldn't go to the window because the window didn't exist. If you create a window and you don't know its name, you could never tell FileMaker to go to that window. Does that make sense? You have to.
Huh. So basically, it's just hovering off in the void, and you're never able to access it again because you can't even see it. That's kind of
wild. You can't see it. Yeah, it is. So like this window right here is called gets, but a lot of these will be a name with a base table or maybe with a server name behind it or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to, if you really want to control it, name it, and then at least in your programming, keep track of what you name stuff and know that they are potentially sitting there lurking off the side. If you, so here's the deal: if you're in WebDirect and you tell it to close a window, and you don't give it any more explicit instructions, it's going to go to the next window underneath and throw it up on screen. See, that's the danger part of closing a window in WebDirect. You better know what's underneath there.
Okay,
right?
So closing, even though all the invisible windows are attached to the single window, closing the main window actually just grabs.
When I say closing a window, it's a single document interface. You're in a browser window, but within that, it's virtualized FileMaker layouts within FileMaker windows. Okay.
That's a wild concept. So yeah, I'll just schedule a beginner.
Yeah, let's schedule that because that will
to explain it to me and therefore the rest of the audience.
Well, if you have the question, Margaret, then probably half the people here have that question. We had last error. We had last error detail. We can look at this. Is a fairly new function for ODBC. It returns a bunch of stuff, but I don't do a lot of ODBC. I don't do personally a lot of execute SQL script steps. Understand that there's execute SQL script step and then an execute SQL function. Two different things. Okay, so just keep in mind when people say, "Oh, just use SQL." Are we talking about the script step? Or are we talking about the function? Because they're named identically, I believe. So for actions, attempts to host securely, SSL certificate message, for external script steps, blah, blah, blah. Something about curl, for operations that attempt to block records, blah, blah, blah. For plugins, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, so I'm not sure this will do a lot for you in basic error trapping. I thought it mostly was about doing the error detail with ODBC originally, but it apparently supports other. These are like an arsenal of edge cases right here. ODBC for most users, edge case. Curl with API support. A lot of people are doing that, but still, for operations with curl operations, returns a message from the curl library for each response from the server. Right, supports curl options. So that's interesting. That's not bad. But just keep in mind it's more for a senior developer. Last error location returns the script name, line number that were returned by the get last error. That's interesting. When did that come out? It's been around
19.6.1, so it's
about a year and a
shiny.
half. Well, extremely shiny. Yeah, exactly. So that's an interesting one. We'll have to play with that some more. I probably have played with this. It's one of those things I don't use every day, so I don't use every day. I kind of forget about it. Let's see. A lot of these are to support utilities, right? Last message choice. If you use the dreaded custom dialog, if you want, and this was the original hard certification test. They had a very elaborate thing where you had to know last message choice, and it'll return 1, 2, or 3 or whatever, which is the possible buttons that you press on that. But most people don't use that custom dialog. Get layout access. Mark and I were talking about this. This gets into security. Okay. This is where when we did security yesterday, we talked about users having access to being restricted access to either a layout. They could either see all the layouts or only see certain layouts. was generally the kind of the idea. So if you have a sales team, you only want them to see certain layouts because sales teams, being sales teams, are very competitive, especially with each other. You got to be careful with that. Record. So you have layout access. You also scroll down here, you'll have record access right here. There's the matching one. So it tells you whether the current user has, they can view the current layout or record. They can edit the current layout or record. They can delete the current layout or record. It tells you how deep. If I go in here, it'll tell you like it's a 0 if it's this, and it's a 1 if there was this. It tells you what these are, but pretty much tells you like what it does is through a script. Like when you've noticed when you've gone to a security in FileMaker and you go to an area you're not supposed to, it says unavailable, or where it kind of grays out the whole screen. It gives you that little message, right? Whatever it says, unavailable or access, illegal access, or whatever. It's something that you don't really want to see as a developer. You want the users not to be exposed to that. Well, what if the user, if you have a script and it goes to a layout and there's a possibility that the person doesn't have access to it, right? Then that script step will tell you, hey, I've landed on this layout or this record, more importantly, does the user have access to this? And if the answer is no, you might want to bounce the user somewhere else. If you just drop them on a layout that's grayed out, like the whole screen grays out and they're fuzzed out, right? And then they're just going to call you. It's an automatic call the developer and yell at them. It's a guaranteed phone call from your customer. So if you have that possibility, then you want to do a check to see if you should really drop and leave them there. That would be another conversation we do. Layout level, record level access, and layout level access. And then these two are the functions that kind of go with to see what actually happened. Because you can actually set up record access based programmatically. Margaret, you're still there, right? Hello?
I am there. I was noting off in a note field before I forgot.
Ah, you're making notes. Yeah. So,
question.
Question.
Beginner question, which we're cycling backwards, so I'm grabbing it before we forget. So why is the custom dialog dreaded?
Well, let's just play with that real quick and you'll see the problem, right? So here, okay, remember the road to hell is paved with telling your customer no, right? It's one of the ways to get like fired off a project when you tell your customer no enough. And so I don't like anything that will lead to unnecessary no's. So if I go into script workspace and I create a record saying, it says delete record, right? Here's a script that says delete record. But we say show custom dialog, okay? We say danger, okay? And then you could make a calculation. You can say whatever you want. Are you sure you want to delete this record? Okay. And then you say, okay, or cancel, or whatever. So then you would do an if statement and you would say if, and then remember that function a second ago, get message choice. If it equals, I think 1, hopefully it's 1 is the first button. Sometimes Claris does programming where 0 is the first position. I think it'd be 1, 2, 3 on this without me guessing. So if they do 1, we're going to say, yes, it can delete. Right. So this is how computers worked in the old days. They still work for people who aren't too excessively, this is like really old design style. So I'm going to hit save. I'm going to hit play. So we're over here. We have a record. I'll just say, hello world. Okay. I'm going to run the script. I'm going to hit play. There's your dialogue. Okay. It looks great. Other than people don't pay attention to dialogues and they don't read the messages. Okay. Now, that's not necessarily Claris's fault, but that is a serious concern. So even in our book, we talk about this. We had a dialogue that said, fire torpedo, snot weasel, Bravo 5, victory, whatever. And then at the bottom says delete. No one reads it. They almost never read it in the book, right? It's like one of those sort of things. If I say, okay, yeah, message choice 1 equals a delete. So if I create a new record, I say snot weasel, right? Or something like that. And I run it again. And if I say, so that's button number 1, there's button number 2, and button number 3 was turned off. So if I select button number 2, it doesn't delete it. Now, here's the problem. Well, Richard, we really need more explanation in there. Okay, so I go to that Big Valley, the helicopter guys, and they say, yeah. So we want, and it's going to big rotors and explosive parts, and then it's going to do this other stuff. And then, but then warning, if you delete it, then the FAA might come down because the bolts that were on the Boeing door of the 737 weren't installed properly, and someone in Seattle is in deep quack. right? This is that project. So I hit OK. And they're like, okay, that's great. And then you say, okay, we're going to run the script. And you're like, oh yeah, save all changes. And you get this dialogue. And you're like, but it's incomplete. It's incomplete. And you're like, well, where's
Oh,
the rest? Where's the rest of it? Oh, I'm sorry. You can't change that. You can't change it. What if I want a little graphic right here that says like a little exploding hamster or something with a grenade you pulled the pin out of or something like that? Or what if I want to change the color or I want to get rid of the little buttons up here? And then of course, then someone goes, well, Richard, you can just make this bigger like this, except that it's only bigger on your computer and it doesn't solve the problem on any of the other 500 people using the solution. And so I had to say, no, you can't make it universally useful for everyone else. No, you can't change its design. No, you can't put artwork in here. No, I don't want these buttons to look like this. I want them to look like something else. You keep saying no. It's really hard to say yes with this function. So what we do is we build a card style window, right? Window, right? So it's another layout. So if I get a layout, and I'm just going to do this in Warp 9 here real quick. And all the advanced developers here kind of know this, but this is really a good question. I say computer, I'm going to say delete record, question mark. It'll be a form view, and that's great. So then what I do is I make it, this is the new layout, and I'm going to make it a little bigger. Can I make it? There it is down there. So there's the side. I'm going to make it much smaller, and I'm going to make it much smaller this way. I'm going to get rid of the top. I clicked on it, got rid of it. So then what I want is a snuggly little mess dialogue here that says, danger. Are you sure you want to delete? Now, because it's a layout, we can do anything, right? It can have artwork. It can be upside down. It can be backwards. Colors can be anywhere. Makes sense. You can put your own buttons over here. You can make buttons that are on the side. They're up to down. Whatever. They can have whatever you want. Unlimited creative flavors, right? So then over here, what we do is we duplicate it. We call it delete to the sequel, right? And then all it does is it pops this, is that you say new window, right? And you're going to come over here and get with the specification and say, well, I really want a card window. So you're popping a layout into a layout, which simulates a dialogue, right? Pretty flexible. It's one of the better features that was dragged into the product, right? So we say it like this, and it's going to do some other stuff and gray out the other options and whatever. And I'm not going to get through the whole thing of the if statement. If I hit save though, and I run it, so I'm over here, I'm over on this layout here. And so instead of seeing this giant, this dialogue that pops up, right? If I see this one, you have this one, which is kind of great, but the way it looks right here is it. If you don't like this or your customer doesn't like it, remember, you don't control your customer. You don't control your customer. I'll say that again. You don't control your customer. Okay. I'm going to hit cancel. Or you can run something like this, which centers itself up and it drops in there, and you can cut and you can change the size of this. You can change anything about this. This is awesome. By the way, I had a customer, just so you know, I was worried about him. He couldn't find the X. He was so frustrated, the Big Valley Aviation, the boss down there. And he was nice about it, but he couldn't find it. He put all this data entry in. It was all saved. He couldn't figure out how to get out of it because I hadn't programmed the escape key in to get out of it. I mean, the escape key, that's where you have a script trigger that checks the escape key. Nick has done that before. He pulled the plug on the computer and waited till I got back today to nicely explain to me that he was pissed off about that. So the little X up here is too small. Everyone,
it's very wee, and it's not
it's very wee.
It's not color coded.
And I sent them a message saying, warning, it's very wee, and this is going to happen. So just be looking for it. And of course, the customer didn't read my email. They said they read the first 5 words of my email, looked at the picture I included, and then deleted it. And that is so typical of customer interaction. Was I upset? No. Were they upset? No, because they know that they probably did something stupid. And it all started with the fact that they didn't read their email. I'm guilty as the next person of not fully reading emails as clearly as I should. That being said, you don't want to yell at someone over your own inability to read email fully, right? So I knew that was a turd. The cat laid a turd on the floor. It was waiting for someone to step on it. I didn't have time to fix it. So ideally, I would have fixed it before the customer got their fingers on it. I was at DEF CON, Engage. I couldn't get to it. But I sent them an email saying, warning, I've got to code this in there, but it's not in there. So look for the little X in the corner. All the people who are less than 70-year-old got it. The one customer who's over 70 goes, he pulled the plug on the PC. It was awesome. So welcome to anticipating what people will do and then trying to keep them from being human and doing default human behavior. Questions?
Hopefully that answers your question, butterflies and bugs. Otherwise,
butterflies and bugs. We
I
got 10 minutes, Margaret. We have the snot weasel. We're going to keep going here.
Yeah, where were we in the get function list?
I don't know. Let me go over here and type that up. Get function.
We're about 2/3 of the way down, I think.
2/3 of the way. So temporary path.
You have to click the top. Go back up. Up. Go up. You have to actually click the
I was like, wondering why does it look different? Okay, let me zoom back in.
There you go.
Okay, so allow.
We went through A, we got all the C's. We were in the L's, I think.
Document. Well, kind of. We were. Oh no, we weren't. So we got right by here. Encryption state. So remember yesterday we were talking about there was some sort of SSL encryption somewhere up above, and it said encryption over the wire. It didn't say over the wire, but it implied that, right? So this one here, it says returns the value representing the file's current encryption states. This is one of those deals where you have to find the important word. And the important word is, because remember, Claris uses the word encryption in a lot of places. What it should say is returns the representing the file's current encryption state. It should say parentheses ear next to it, encryption at rest, right? But no, once again, the engineering did not write this. This was written by someone who's not in engineering, because engineers would have written that for clarity's sake, right? So encryption state, it should say ear, parentheses ear here. It doesn't have to say ear by itself, because that would be not clear, but all of us know encryption at rest is on the file as it sits there at rest. Even if it's not running, it's still encrypted. Encryption, SSL is encryption over the wire as it transits across the internet from the server to the client. Encryption at rest is on the file. And then we talked about encryption functions the other day where you can encrypt the contents of a single field, right? Remember that? So you've got
yes,
wire, you got network, you got the file, you got the field, and I thought there were 4 of them, but those are the 3 off the top of my head I'm remembering right now. So go backwards. Error capture state. Remember yesterday we talked about user abort state. So if you set error capture on, which is really set error suppression on, it suppresses the error. The errors are always captured, okay, to be clear, but they're not suppressed from the user. So error suppression on, yes or no. Allow user abort on or off. There was to detect that was running, right? Okay. Locale elements. I'm not going to give this, has to do with localization, stuff like that. If you're in Brazil and you install it, maybe you have a Portuguese version of it. That's going to be helpful for that. File name, file path, file size, file count, high contrast. This has to do with not attention deficit disorder, but the Americans with Disabilities Act, largely, but this exists for a long time. This is high contrast for people who have a visual impairment of some type, generally, right? And so if they turn on this high contrast mode and it zooms everything in, that's what this refers to, I think, for the most part. It doesn't really say that. Host application version, right? So that is the version of your server or your own application version if you're doing peer-to-peer, right? So, because we ran that today, right? The host should be really the server. People shouldn't really be using peer-to-peer because you're just not protected. It's just, I would use peer-to-peer. If I didn't have a server, I needed something for an hour, and if it died, I wouldn't be fired. That would be okay. Then those are the parameters for using peer-to-peer hosting. The host IP address, the host name, installed FileMaker plugins, super useful. Installed FileMaker plugins as a JSON string. That's because they built this. Someone whined somewhere. This is right here is a developer schniveling and whining is what this is. I'm being dead serious. I guarantee that's what happened. This one probably came out FileMaker 12. This other one came out. Yeah. Someone whined for like 10 years. That's like 10 years of whining, and then they added that. Is that funny or what? Right? That's funny. That's sorry. I make fun
I
of
mean, it's
myself.
relatable. I mean, we
I
all
totally
whine to them
get it.
about certain things,
We
and
all
then
whine, but then sooner or later they listen to certain schniveling and whining, right? Get layout access. That's the whether you have access to that. The security has locked them out. Layout count, whatever. Layout name could be useful. Not the window name, the layout name. Window name is different than layout name.
oh, okay, yes.
Layout number is the things that you'll see, like script number. This is why when you go into FileMaker and you rename a layout, it doesn't break everything. If you go into scripts, you rename a script, it generally doesn't break anything unless you're talking about some sort of web stuff. Same with layout names. That's because internally, Claris FileMaker platform, the platform, uses secret internal numbers. If you go to Monkey Bread and you turn on like show me the layout numbers and script numbers, stuff like that, it will show you those numbers, right? If I go to manage, let me just turn it
You're in Safari, so you need to
I'm
be
in Safari, so let me go here. So if I go to plugins, I go to monkey spread. I say configure monkey spread. I'm looking for
script IDs right there. It's about a third of the way down the list. Below the copy script button.
Is it on or off?
It's currently on.
It is on. Okay, then is the layout IDs on there too? Do you see it? Oh, show
yeah,
okay,
IDs.
They're both on. Okay, so I don't know why.
You can get the number for it in FileMaker without even knowing what the number is. I guess that's what to tell you it is without the Monkey Bread plugin, huh?
Well, remember once again, how many people that you've gone to and they have a layout called print label. And then there's another one called print label and another one called print label. And it's like, how the hell does FileMaker keep track of this? Because they all have the same name. Because we are, as beginning developers, we just do dumb stuff that you don't know any better. But Claris FileMaker helps people who are inexperienced be successful. That's a big part of it. I was horrifically successful without understanding relationships the first year I used this product, or first 6 months I used it. And it was FileMaker too. And there weren't relationships in there, but there were. You could do lookups, which is essentially a relationship. Okay. It was a relationship and you had to like figure out the keys and stuff like that. If I hit okay, I go over here and I say tools. If I go over here to script workspace, do I have the
yeah, see, 1 and 2.
Okay, so that's not super. I back up. Let's find something more interesting. Yeah. I'm gonna go do that. Recents, CMS, script, workspace. Yeah. So there's script. Now they remember when you start a new file, they start sequentially. So this script right here was the 21st script created. When you tell it to run this thing called container insert picture, whatever it is, FileMaker goes, yeah, that's what the developer calls it, but they're stupid. We're just going to call it script 21. And it always references 21. Makes sense? That's how it works. This is 475, right? There's 1551. They were resequenced. We reordered them because you could never see this. You never ever see this because we're using Monkey Bread. You can see it. Same thing with layouts. How come I can rename a layout and FileMaker keeps working? Because FileMaker doesn't use the name of the layout to trigger as a target, right? I got to manage layouts. It should have a layout number buried over there. They are. There's an MBS column here. So there's now if it's a folder, that's not a layout, right? So it doesn't count. But there you go. There's 991 and 1043, and makes you well, where were the previous 1,000 layouts at? I don't know.
Well, maybe they were created throughout here and then deleted and then undeleted. And then
deleted, right? Now, well, okay. So the question is, does FileMaker reuse its numbers? No. If you clone the file, which it's a process, you go file, you go save as a clone or wherever, save it's file. Yeah, save as you can't do it because the file. No, it should do it locally. If you run a clone, it dumps all the data and it resets all those. Well, no, it resets the record numbers, but the layouts and the scripts are still in there, right? I don't think you can reset the layout and the script counters. But when you do a clone, it strips all the data out, all the browse data, the user data out. It resets those record. There's a record counter too, just like this is a script counter. There's a record one. There's a layout one. Every item in FileMaker has an invisible ID. This just helps us. That's why I number my own thing. So because we never could see this, right? That's why I said, hey, you number it, sequence them together. By doing it this way, you can still find things easily. Like if you're looking for 700, they're all in here. 705, it'd be near 704. You look and you're like, hey, what moron did 3 of these with the same number? Well, at least they're together and you know that you could put A, B, or C on them. It makes sense. There's some logic here, right? So anyway, Well, I think we're about out of time. I do apologize. Calvin will be in tomorrow to discuss the results of the Super Bowl and how he's unhappy about those results. But it is what it is, right? So, all right, pretty good stuff. Other questions we have? If you have topics or suggestions for the live stream, let us know. Send an email to support@rcconsulting.com. All right, so that's about it for today. I don't have anything else at the moment. I've got to go to a meeting with Claris here and discuss with them something. Oh, studio stuff, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right.
And
Goodbye,
I'm still
everybody.
here. Bye.
Y'all have a good one. Nah.
Y'all?
I don't know.
Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir!